On Point is brought to you by Dargin Global.
A very good evening. Welcome to another edition of On Point. I'm Patricia K.
And I'm Dennis Strong.
And we've got lots to talk about on the show today.
Big up yo.
Big up my what, Dennis?
A cultural expression. I mean, I heard it. We're talking about, of course, the graduation ceremony at Edna Mandela.
The valedictorian ended his speech with a bang.
And I think it was distasteful. I really do. I don't think that something like that belongs there. I mean, they have children there, you know, it's an open space. I don't think that someone who's a graduate, I mean, people talk about cultural expression. I've heard someone from UA talk about it. Well, they're the same ones who say that Patois should be an official language, right? Which I find ridiculous. But I just think that that is not a place to say that sort of thing.
Dennis mashing holy for cons today, boy. Yeah. I think there are lots of people in the space from Edna who have come to his defense. Their arguments primarily are two things. One, that is the takeaway from the speech. And it really was a whole chronology of his own struggles and the reflection of the struggles of those of his classmates, his cohort, that have been ignored. The only real talking point out of all that material was, in fact, that expletive at the end. And so people were disappointed that it's overshadowed the rest of the speech and the rest of what was communicated. The other thing is that there are those who say, this is Edna. This isn't any other academic institution. This, if any other place, is the place where you're going to find somebody who is going to be comfortable and familiar and use Jamaican vernacular. And that's as colorful as it gets.
I don't buy that.
Don't buy it?
No, I don't buy it.
Fair enough.
There's a certain amount of decency that you must have, you know.
Yeah. Well, the other big news this week, and we're still watching it, is what's happening with the Jamaican Medical Doctors Association. They feel at risk. There are, I think, 11 issues that they took to the Ministry of Health. The minister only returned on Tuesday, and so they're looking to have their demands met. There is looming strike action from that segment, and they can't legally strike. So what that will look like if it does in fact manifest.
Yeah, sick out or something like that.
But legally they're not supposed to do that.
But I mean, the police aren't supposed to do it when they do it. You know, it's sad that it has come to this stage, and I understand the concerns that they have. Safety, very important, and you know.
Remuneration.
The truth though is that a lot of them, the concerns of the citizens also that speak to the way that they deliver customer service has also been a problem. Maybe not just with the set now, but it has always been a problem. I mean, we have grown up in Jamaica and we know that, you know, when you go to the hospital, you know, and the way medical personnel deal with you, you know, a lot is left wanted. So the truth is that, you know, if you plant apple, you're going to get apple. You know?
I understand both sides of the divide, and certainly we're going to see how this plays out over the rest of this week. So we'll see. But we've got a lot to talk about in the show today, folks. We're starting things out with pension reform. It's 15 years overdue. The laws were passed, and it's taken us a decade and a half to get to the chapter that we're at now. How will the pension reform roll out? We'll talk about it.
Then later on in the show, it's National Youth Month here in Jamaica, and we'll be hearing from some young people about how they plan to help and influence and shape government policy.
But first, this week's top business stories.
At number 5, more than 1,350 Australian women have won a long-running class action lawsuit against pharmaceutical giant Johnson & Johnson over vaginal mesh implants. Australia's federal court found that Johnson & Johnson subsidiary Ethicon failed to warn patients and surgeons about the risks posed by the products. At number 4, a new entity has been launched aimed at fostering development of the local and regional alternative investment industry. The not-for-profit entity, dubbed the Caribbean Alternative Investment Association Korea, will promote expansion of private equity, venture capital, real estate, private capital, and other alternative investment instruments. Korea is anchored by the Development Bank of Jamaica (DBJ) through its Jamaica Venture Capital Program. At number 3, Prime Minister Andrew Holness says Jamaica and China will focus on increasing trade, particularly in getting more Jamaican goods into the Chinese market. He says the new strategic partnership reflects an enhanced level of engagement between the two countries within the context of Jamaica's participation in the Belt and Road Initiative. Mr. Holness was delivering a statement to the House of Representatives on Tuesday following his recent 8-day official working visit to the People's Republic of China. At number 2, a leading international economic organization has warned that risks to the global outlook have increased. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, in its latest report, argues that prospects have steadily deteriorated. It is forecasting continued growth of around 3%, but warns that the risks have increased. The report says a lack of direction on climate policy is holding back business investments. At number 1, the Planning Institute of Jamaica (PIOJ) says the Jamaican economy grew by an estimated 0.3% for the July to September 2019 quarter relative to the corresponding period last year. The outturn for the quarter was driven by an estimated 1.2% growth in the services industry, despite a 2.1 percentage point contraction in the goods producing industry.
When we come back, what's in store for Jamaica during the next phase of pension reform? Stay with us right here on Point.
Welcome back to On Point. It's been 15 years since the new pension law has been passed, and now the Financial Services Commission is ready to roll out Chapter Next. What will that look like? We're talking about it with Director of the Financial Industry Association, Lisa Suarez.
Lewis,
thank you very much. Thank you, Lisa.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Patria. Thanks, Dennis.
Yeah,
Hi.
man. Welcome, Lisa. Lisa, why is it taking us so long to get this second phase of pension reform
Right.
going?
Well, I think 2004, when it was first passed,
Right.
you know, it was new to put all of these regulations in place. Even the best and biggest pension plans, you know, struggle to comply, to put things in an organized way, to the reporting, the new rules, changes you wanted to make, you couldn't make immediately. You had to have stakeholder engagement. It was quite formal. Understandably, I think it would take some time to see how people responded, how stakeholders responded. So the FSC is the repository of complaints as well from members, pensioners. And I think if they saw how that unfolded, they would have expected it to take some time before starting phase 2. Maybe it should have happened much earlier. Yeah. Certainly, it's a pension industry association in Jamaica, actually. So it's really wider. It's professionals in that association, including actuaries and legal providers. And we basically want to make sure that it's right, but we have been impatient. So the last thing I've heard is March 2020. And I think, you know, they're going to keep to that date. And that's the FSC's date, so we hope so.
What will that March 2020 change signify? What will happen at that point?
Well, the amendments that are going to, we expect that we have discussed, because the Pension Industry Association is an advocacy group, and we are probably one of the first points of contact for any sort of feedback for changes. So the things we know about include portability, and including portability to other jurisdictions.
So
you can leave Jamaica and even go abroad, and maybe you can take it there. But certainly portability will be mandatory locally, so you can go from one to the other. Approved pension plans, okay? Yes. Your compulsory contributions, there's no way that you can take that out. That would have to stay in the plan. When we look on the participation, you know, the wide participation that we have now, nothing really changes in that regard. But those are the main things that we see that would be important.
One of the problems, though, and a cry that comes a lot from people, used to be the whole matter of your pension, you invest in it, and it's really because the depreciation that has taken place with the dollar. You know, when people retire, it just means nothing.
Right.
You know, and I know that there recently has been some move for US dollar investments.
Right, and that actually didn't have to wait for the act to change. So I think the Bank of Jamaica has now moved that limit up from 5%. You know, there was some ambiguity in the system in terms of kind of, you know, 5%, is it limited, or could it be US indexed and therefore still in Jamaican dollars? Either way, I think it's going to go up to, I believe it's 20%.
Yeah, I think they're trying to move it to 20.
So remember, most pension plans are in Jamaican dollars. They are not indexed. They don't have any built-in increase. So when your pension is either a defined contribution plan or a defined benefit plan, and say it's a defined benefit, meaning that they define it today what your calculation is going to be, depending on your years in the plan and so on. It's Jamaican dollars. So few have really had indexation to the US dollar. And I'll give you a quick story. I was a trustee in the Cable and Wireless pension plan. We were one of the plans that had a big surplus, and we had an opportunity to carve out some of that surplus in consultation with members and pensioners and the sponsor, and convert some of that to an annuity, which is now US indexed. At the time we did that, you know, people were upset, and it was $70 to one. That was in about 2005, 2006.
They're not mad now?
Oh, they'd thank me if they see us in the street to say, well, we're so glad that trustees brought it to us, because it is one of the weaknesses plans have had over the years, that they're Jamaican dollars, not indexed. They didn't have enough foreign exchange.
Let's talk about what people's quality of life will look like after these reforms have been implemented, because essentially that's truly what we're talking about. When I get to the stage where I've worked my 65 years, my 60 years, whatever it is, what's my quality of life going to be, and how much am I now going to be able to depend on these new reformed pension plans?
So the reform phase 2 is, well, let's just put things into perspective. The employed labor force in Jamaica is about 1.2 million workers. The current formal plans that we have cover about 8.9% of that, which is 108,000. So the reform is really covering that group. When we go into conversations like micro pensions, then you're talking about a much wider group of persons. When you talk about the tourism, let's give you a couple of numbers, like the tourism workers pension plan is about 300,000.
And the IRAs and that sort of thing.
Right. Then we have over the years included the individual retirement schemes. So persons who are employed formally, and you know, they can now go and buy those other individual plans. They would be participating as well. Most of the plans now are going towards a defined contribution plan. So it's what you put in, you're going to get out with it. More you put in, obviously, the better. And the management of those investment funds will also tell you what you're going to get at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Lisa, because do we believe that we have good enough managers? Because your manager is very important, because if you don't have a good manager, you could end up in 20 years time with nothing really.
Exactly. Yes. Well, Dennis, that's a good point, and I think, and anybody in the financial services industry would say that our caliber of management of pension plans is of a very high standard. Our act came out as one of the more formal, modern and progressive pieces of legislation, albeit it's delayed now for phase 2. Maybe, you know, 2 or 3 other islands or Caribbean nations, including Belize, would have got to that level. So we have very capable and qualified managers in any of these arrangements that we have. Remember, the government also has a pension plan, and they've been able to manage it well. And I would say that there's a lot of transparency. So any of the well-known names that are out there, you know, they give you annual certificates. You see what the funds have actually earned. and you can see the kind of contributions in each asset class that you've put in, what it is earning. Most of them will give you a comparison to benchmark, some sort of index, and they're all very well organized, and you know, I think the accountability for the compliance is very high. Our financial sector is very compliant there, and I would say that most people are very happy with the returns in terms of the investments.
You made mention of a relatively recent pension plan that's been set up, and that's for the tourism workers. And you can't help but juxtapose what's happening with that particular pension scheme, how quickly it was put together, rolled out, implemented, people are happy, versus 15 years and still waiting. What would the big difference have been with the two?
I think the political will might have been there, and I think, you know, tourism, you had formal pension plans, you know, not to necessarily call names of hotels, but certainly, you know, Sandals had a plan. But we have had that industry expand now. We have many more players. Foreign direct investment has played a big part in the expansion of that industry. So they have not necessarily put that in the benefits package. And I think the minister, you know, I can't tell you when the idea was initiated, but they have seen a need to really formalize it. And the concept of financial inclusion, which started in 2017, is real. It's needed, it's a trend in developing countries, and for us it is a big thing. So this is part of saying, well, this is our biggest employer, we need it to be organized, it's very modern, it's very progressive, we love it as a pension industry association. It really allows not just the employees in the hotels, but you're talking about tour operators, you know, people who are SMEs who are there, they can actually contribute as well.
But with all of that, Lisa, I mean, one of the big problems with pensions in Jamaica is that not enough people have it, eh?
Of course.
And what does that mean for us in the future?
It's very bad.
Labor force?
Very bad, because we have a ratio that we call old age dependency. So using official stats, and I think this is from the ILO, in 2010 we had about 12%. So in other words, you know, that's the percentage of the employed workforce that is old, that's going to depend on people who are earning incomes to look after them. I think that number is going to go from 12% to about 20% by 2030. So, you know, in countries like Jamaica, you know, children are your pension. So you find
or
that,
the government.
Or the government, of course. And, you know, we do have a brilliant social security called NIS, but you have to be contributing to NIS to get it. So the vast majority. NIS has about 8 or 9 or more benefits, including, you know, for centurions who, you know, didn't contribute or couldn't contribute at the time it formed in 1966. But the point of the matter is that we, in that labor force of 1.2, employed workforce of 1.2, I think about 60%, they say, are underemployed or earn around a minimum wage. They are not in that formal sector, and they may not necessarily be in the tourism sector. So they're agriculture workers. They really have to be brought in a way, and that's really the formation of micro pensions. So that is something that is in part of the national financial inclusion
Let's
strategy.
talk through what that micro pension scheme would look like and how close we are to something that's actual and real that people can participate in.
Well, I think that one is going to be fast-tracked. I think there's a lot of will and interest. It's, you know, you Google it and it's coming up. What's good is that we have some models that we're looking on. So the FSC is charged with that pillar of the National Financial Inclusion Strategy, which is financial resilience. So, you know, they're going to have to put in all the regulatory work, which won't take 15 years. I can.
We hope.
No, it won't. It won't.
10?
Yes, I don't know. I think if we're asked our opinion, we'd say tack it on to what you have and just get it done quickly.
As opposed to starting from scratch.
Yes, but I think what's helpful is that we're not recreating a wheel. India, Kenya, some of those countries have really started it. So we have models that we're looking on. As an industry, we are already looking on some of them. The FSC is looking on them. I would say India has a pretty strong model. It's, you know, I think with that big population, They have had some national policies about becoming cashless. They're technology driven. So why should we recreate the wheel? We're going to look on stuff like that, I'm sure, and say what can we use here. But I think for us, they have different models, but certainly we want to see as many persons as possible covered by micropensions.
So
I don't know if you need an explanation on micropensions.
Yeah, man, sure.
And you can fill in.
Go ahead.
It's a model that allows you to, it's really for people with lower incomes. And as I said, if you're underemployed and earning at a small, in a small income, and you're not going to come in to give your contributions to a plan. So it's just a model that allows, in some countries they have a field option. They go out to workers, register them, give them a card. I think like in India they may use like a Visa platform so people can go and just swipe the card and put money from maybe their mobile bank account into their micropensions, any amount. So there's no, they try to encourage consistent savings, but it can be any amount, depends what you earn.
Who manages that, the micropension funds?
I think in different countries they use different models. Some it's national, and maybe they will, I guess like the tourism workers, they'll probably put an RFP out and get somebody to manage it versus central government.
Okay.
So it's a number of things.
Because central government has not really done a good job in managing the NIS, eh?
Well, I think they're looking on, they're reflecting on that now and putting in improvements, yes.
But one of the problems though is that, when you talk about, you're looking at something now, you haven't done it in the past, it actually has affected many people before, right? Because my biggest fear is that, well, which is really a reality, that when the Jamaican population, the older set is actually growing. So what's going to happen in a few years' time? Because what's going to happen, Patria, is that taxpayers are going to have to fund a lot of those things. Which is why we don't have the luxury
of 15 years to try and figure this out.
Yes, I think we're all agreeing on that. We don't have the luxury of time. We're growing older. Income disparity is big in Jamaica. Financial inclusion, I really applaud the government for saying, look, this is a priority. Everybody agrees and we're pushing for it. And even I have been in environments where, corporates are talking about strategy. Financial inclusion is part of it. They're assuming that's going to happen because we won't have the resources. And even if you have a formal, and Dennis can tell you, even if you have a formal pension plan or some of the best, chances are when you do your calculation, it's not going to be enough to live on to your satisfaction.
And that's part of where mindset has to change as well, because legislation is one thing. But part of the reason so many people are not a part of a pension scheme, yes, they're underemployed, but they also don't think about 20, 30, 40 years from now. And they're not able to calculate, this is what I'm going to need to be able to live.
That's so true. I mean, I should mention, one of the elements of legislation is also, the change is also allowing you to have more than one. So now the law says you can only be in one plan. If you are prepared to save more and in different plans, you should be. So that's going to be one of the things that frees up. But we recognize, and the Industry Association is also about coverage and education because we want a vibrant industry. We recognize that there are a lot of new jobs that are being created are contract workers. So, and these individual retirement schemes exist, but they're not taking them up.
Yes.
So we started to look on different models, and we realized that the IDB has been funding pilots across Latin America to kind of make pension savings and more exciting. Because they're having the same problem. All of us in this belt are having the same problem, low savings, etc.
Onus on that point would be on who, employee or employer, or would it be a mixed bag?
A mixed bag. So it is also going to, for example, I'll give you one of the pilots they're running, a taxi operator, a taximan. And he goes to a regular gas station and he gets loyalty points at a gas station. He can use it to buy gas. What they're saying now is we're going to put a model in place where he has a loyalty card. When he goes to the cashier, he can either use the card to buy gas, or the cashier is going to say, would you like to use that for your micropensions? And he may say yes. And those points convert into value that he goes towards his micropension. He has earned them.
But that requires a technology backbone. Eh?
Yes, but we should explore all of those options. So those are some of the things that we saw are very exciting in the region. They're being piloted. It's accessible, no minimum. as we earn, we save, and you're making it something much more accessible to somebody who is not going to come and go to one of the big institutions.
Absolutely.
And of course the whole KYC element comes in, and that in itself, we have to make that more reachable and accessible.
Well, certainly there are lots of changes that need to happen in the next couple of months. We'll look forward to March 2020 to ensure that we're able to roll out that phase 2.
Yes, we're confident.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you.
Soares, Lewis, not forgetting her last name this
Patricia,
time.
Dennis.
Thank you so much.
Thank
We'll
you.
take a quick break, folks. When we come back, it's more On Point. Welcome back to On Point. The 10th sitting of the National Youth Parliament happened just last week, and it saw scores of Jamaica's young people getting together to weigh in on some of the national issues. But do government officials, policymakers, actually take their suggestions seriously?
And joining us now to discuss this issue are Andrew Rogers, member of the National Youth Advisory Council, and Javon Mowat, who participated in the National Youth Parliament in the role of Prime Minister.
Hey!
Yes, welcome to On Point, Prime Minister.
Thanks for having me.
So you're Prime Minister, you would be who?
I am on the National Youth Advisory Council, the steering committee for the Youth Parliament.
Got you.
The real power.
How do you get involved in the youth parliament? Is it that you gentlemen would have known each other before? How do you actually get involved?
We started out not knowing each other at all. He was actually one of our advisors in the county of Middlesex. You get involved by there's a call from ministry to have young persons who would like to participate in the program. It's a year-long program that invites young persons from all across the island to come and participate in outreach projects, and they will get rewarded at the end with a sitting in Parliament. That's really a reward at the end of the journey.
Got you.
It's really what the main focus of it is.
But throughout the year, you will be involved within your communities in various projects?
Correct.
How?
A key element of the program is that they have to participate in projects at 2 levels, the constituency level. So each person a part of the program would be assigned to a constituency. And within that constituency, they would have to engage in projects which would engage young people and help to essentially improve the lives of young people and to also gain the views of young people on critical issues of national importance.
These are the constituencies in which you live, and are these projects spearheaded by you, or you're getting involved in existing projects?
The assignment process tries as best as possible to place people where they live, but things are not always as tidy as they could be, so each member is assigned to a constituency. And in the constituency, they would spearhead the project, but they would sometimes engage with the already existing groups within the community, the youth groups, the police clubs, the youth innovation centers. So there is a coordination that is involved in engaging in the projects.
Understood.
So that's the constituency project that each member of the parliament has to engage in. At the second level is the county project, where the members of the parliament are divided by the 3 counties of Jamaica, Cornwall, Middlesex, and Surrey. And they are tasked with performing, or carrying out rather, a county project. And that project normally is completed before the sitting. All of them were completed before the sitting. And the projects this year focused on youth violence prevention, which incidentally is one of the topics debated in Parliament this year.
Interesting.
So tell me something, how do you become Prime Minister?
It's really a process of,
It's not an election, and
it is actually an election, election of the government members of the parliament. You have to somehow gain their confidence enough for them to actually vote for you and say, hey, we have
in a short period of time.
In a short period of time to say they'd like you to represent them in the parliament as Prime Minister.
So you never give any handouts, right?
Didn't have any handouts. No, there was no vote buying. I can assure you of that.
Does the position come with perks?
No perks whatsoever. It only comes with the title and, some access to some, meeting some persons. But in all fairness, it comes down to that. It's really a pleasure to actually serve as a YMP, and it comes with the benefit of knowing you made some positive difference in your community.
Heartened to see that young people are getting involved. Mm-hmm. Disappointed that the female numbers are low, as they are in the actual parliaments. Are you seeing a lot of women who would have signed up to say, present, count me in?
Well, I should say, during the selection process of the participants of the National Youth Parliament program, we tried to ensure that there was balance, gender balance, and balance in terms of we tried to ensure that a part of the cohort were all different members of the youth group. So unattached youth, disabled youth, youth of different varied experiences. So for the parliament, it was representative of the young people of Jamaica. So indeed, we had quite a lot of females in parliament in the program and quite a lot of females who were speakers as well.
Love that. Do you have intentions of transitioning into actual politics, actual government, actual representational politics, either of you?
Well, I have the intention of really participating in numerous community outreach. That's really where my intention is really focusing.
No intention of being Prime Minister of Jamaica?
No intention of being Prime Minister of Jamaica, no.
You mean, is that bad?
No, I've seen the pressures of leadership and I am saying it's not for me.
What about yourself?
For myself, I am committed to serving my country, and if the opportunity arises in that regard, politically or otherwise, then I may answer that call.
So let me ask you.
Sounds very nebulous.
Yeah.
If me.
Let me ask you though, have you tracked the progress of people who have participated in the past in these programs and seen what, how it has helped them benefit?
Well, I was a member of the Youth Parliament last year in the 2018 sitting, and I can say positively that the members of my cohort have gone on to serve onto different youth groups. They're leaders in the National Youth Council, they've gone on to become youth ambassadors, they've gone on to continue the legacy of which they started in their constituency. Some of them actually partnered with some of the parliamentarians this year so that there's some continuity in the programs within the constituencies. So the baton is not left on the ground when they leave the program, but it continues because they are committed to serving the youth of our country.
Gentlemen, are your voices heard? In this process where you are the youth parliamentarians, you're not just there with your handsome faces, you're actually weighing in on matters that are of concern to young people. Are your voices heard? And do you expect that parliamentarians will implement some of the suggestions and address some of the concerns?
I absolutely believe so. One of the guiding principles of the National Youth Policy is youth mainstreaming. And youth mainstreaming involves the views of young people are taken into consideration in government when they're crafting their programs, policies, and laws. One of the deliverables of the National Youth Parliament is that of the topics debated, there's actually going to be a submission made to the Cabinet with all the views and recommendations that would have been indicated in the National Youth Parliament.
And then have practical views, or everybody wants $1 million from them born and all these kinds of things that perhaps aren't necessary.
The views were tirelessly researched and gone over in great detail to make sure that everything that was stated in the positions that each parliamentarian presents is something based in facts and can truly be represented and implemented throughout the country. So all of the submissions that we will make to Cabinet are things that are based in facts and practical to implement.
And
so
the topics of our
nothing highfalutin and nothing idealistic. So it's all practical implementation.
So is there a constant dialogue between you and the real parliamentarians or real ministers? I mean, do they get constant feedback, or is just a submission that's done at the end?
Well, I can't speak for every parliamentarian, but I can speak for myself. There's some dialogue between myself and the minister with responsibility for the youth division. That's the minister, Orlando Terrelon.
Yes.
So there's some dialogue in terms of what happens and the positions that some of the parliamentarians actually hold on the matters. So that not constant dialogue, but there's dialogue that's ongoing. And in terms of actually views being heard, I do believe that one of them will be the cabinet submission, but as well as the overall views of Parliament, it is taken into consideration when the ministers or the Prime Minister himself somehow takes on national issues. The views that were presented in Parliament are at the back of their mind. It is that the youth are having this view on the matter, and it is considered when they are actually making those.
Some of you are going to be more involved in your constituencies than the actual parliamentarians, who criticisms are levied against them that they are absent after the vote. Your own thoughts on that?
I can't argue with that statement. It is true that some parliamentarians are actually, after the vote, they are not as present in the communities as they should be. And that's just really upon the members of the constituents to actually hold their representatives to account. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones that put them in power. And if it is that you have to run them down throughout the 5 years to actually get some attention from them, you need to look at it and say, what's going to happen when the election time comes around again. But it really comes down to the individuals in the constituency holding their representatives to account. Of course, they need to look into themselves and say, hey, over the years, they've not been doing much for me. So what are they going to do when the time comes for them to vote? That's really what it comes down to.
And if I may add to that question, I believe that's why it is so important for young people to become involved in the political process. Because a key factor is to hold your leaders accountable. And by holding your leaders accountable, you have to get involved, you have to make your voice known, your issues known.
You have to have a vote.
You have to become enumerated, so that's like the first step. You have to become enumerated so that you can exercise your franchise. And I believe that's one way in which we can hold leaders accountable. So the narrative is not, the parliamentarian is not in the constituency and is absent, but it's whether or not the individuals who elected him are holding him to account so that he does not do that, or he or she does not do that. But Mr. Chung, if I may add to your question, the Youth Advisory Council, the role of the Youth Advisory Council is actually to liaise, to be the interlocutor between the views of young people and the government. So as a council, we're responsible for collating the views of young people, of all young people, of different lived experiences, and to put those views in a palatable manner for Parliament, well, for the government to digest. And that is a key part of youth mainstreaming, so that in their consideration of crafting programs, policies and laws, they may have the views of young people on, let's say, drugs, let's say abortion, let's say illicit firearms, that those views are taken into account so that we are at the helm of the solutions that are crafted for our purpose.
But I like the fact that you mentioned those issues, the abortion and this other thing. Do you actually have a deliberate way in setting out these things and communicating them to the parliamentarians and saying, we are the what you call the National Youth Parliament, and this is what we say, how it should go?
In terms of the views of
yes, on the various issues.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, there's a cabinet submission at the end of the day that will compose all the views.
But do they really pay attention to the cabinet submission, though?
Well, I would hope they pay attention to all the cabinet submissions.
But you were there last year.
Yes, I was. And each youth parliament sitting speaks about different issues. Yeah. So the issues we would have spoken about would have been, we spoke about youth participation, we spoke about mental health, and those things have been some of the things that government has been championing. This 2019 Youth Parliament sitting spoke about 4 key issues: abortion, climate change, youth violence prevention, and youth political participation. And we await to see whether those things are already things that government is championing and that are on the tongues of people.
You have already done the submission on that?
Well, the views that were expressed in Parliament, those will be collated. So one of our roles as Youth Advisory Council is to compile the recommendations made by the young people and to submit those recommendations to government for their consideration. Again, so that they can consider it when they're now crafting, revising laws, programs, and policies, so that whatever they're crafting is fit for purpose for the young people.
I want to hear your thoughts on this balance between youth and experience. There are some politicians who not left. They've been there, they're gonna be there. You're going to have to take them out in a wheelchair at some point. Should there be age limits, term limits on politicians? Are older folks staying in at the peril of younger folks?
As with all things in life, there has to be a balance between both of them. There has to be young persons coming into politics and they being political representatives, but there also has to be old persons who are leaving. But in terms of having age limit, I do believe there has to be, because at the end of the day, no matter what career field that you are going into, there is going to be a retirement age that has to be followed. So it goes without saying there has to be one for politicians, because it is actually a career.
Should it be the same as other jobs? At 60, should we be saying, thanks for your service?
I don't believe it should be. It should be the same as other jobs, because the nature of a job is you have a term for 5 years and you are limited to that 5 years. And at the end of that five-year period, you're gonna be in a constituency for maybe 2 or 3 terms. Many persons don't go into, many persons I've seen so far who have not gone into politics until they're in maybe their 40s. So working from that math, they're 2 terms, that's 10 years, so they'll be in their 50s. So at the end of the day, they wouldn't have contributed in their totality as they would have had.
50s young man.
I give you the last word, Andrew.
And my take on that is that I believe politics, unlike any other profession, is different. Different in the sense that you are elected by the people, and the political will is not something that we can arbitrarily, hamper with. So my view is that the retirement age of a politician should depend on whether or not they can or cannot physically, mentally perform their duties, and whether they have acted inappropriately with the people's trust.
Interesting. I love the views. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
I
Thank you
look
for
forward to
having
the
me.
contribution you will make to Jamaica hereafter. We take a break. When we come back, we look at the numbers and the word on the street. Welcome back to On Point. Young people make up a large portion of the Jamaica demographic. What do those numbers look like? Take a look.
27.17% of the Jamaican population is between 0 and 14 years old, while 20.79% is between 15 and 24. According to UNESCO 2011 data, net enrollment in secondary schools stood at 74.27%. And in 2015, the literacy rate for Jamaicans aged 15 to 24 years old stood at 96.5%. November 2019 data from the Statistical Institute of Jamaica Statin showed that the youth unemployment rate was 17.3%. According to a 2010 report from the CARICOM Commission on Youth Development, homicide was the leading cause of death among males aged 15 to 24 at 19.8%. This was followed by HIV/AIDS, 13.6%, and motor vehicle accidents at 9.2%. The National Youth Survey conducted in 2011 highlighted the fact that almost 60% of Jamaica's young people viewed migration as an option.
And our On Point team hit the streets and asked, what financial preparations are you making for retirement?
I would strongly urge every Jamaican as well as young teenagers to always have a side thing for retirement, because when you turn old, nobody wants to broke pocket old people. I know what are the worst sign that woman and everybody road got left you.
For retirement, I'm currently making some stock investments. So I am now engaged with Sagicor, where their stock trading, their rates are significantly good. So I'm working towards that right now.
The plan for my retirement, every paycheck I save 10% of my pay.
Well, I'm investing in the stock market, I'm investing in fixed deposits, I'm investing in regular savings. That's basically it.
In terms of planning for my retirement, I absolutely have a retirement fund, and I'm looking to save and have investments ready. So when that time comes, hopefully in the very near future, where I can retire young, I can live well.
To be honest, I can't even make no plan now, because the minimum wage I go on bad for people.
Dennis, two important things discussed in the show today. One, pension reform. I know that one is a pet peeve for you.
Yeah, because the truth is that if we don't get pension reform right, the whole country is going to suffer. And people long term are going to suffer. I don't think people realize how important it is to start putting aside something from now. And it's not difficult, I mean, you start early and start saving, 10-20%. You find that you'll have a good lump sum.
The reality is that the reformations that are on the table still don't affect the vast majority of Jamaicans. The real concern is that you have almost 90%, more than 90% of Jamaicans who don't have this kind of structured pension plan. They don't think beyond, when I'm not able to work anymore, how am I going to live, how am I going to survive? And it's concerning.
It is concerning. One of the problems why it's like that, though, I think is because of the labor laws. And in 2013, the IMF agreement said that labor market reform was a critical thing to be done, although it can be done, right? And I think that is one of the reasons why you find a lot of people disenfranchised in terms of not having pension plans, not having health insurance because of the way the labor laws are written. People have tended to move towards contract work, and therefore a lot of people have not got in on that.
And so people are happy for the income,
Yeah.
the ability to buy bread today. But you don't think about the issue beyond
Right.
today, when you're not able to be on that contract anymore, the fact that there are no pension benefits with that contract. And then on the other side of the fence, you see where the manufacturers, the call center folks are saying, were I to match the pension contributions, were I supposed to do a different kind of employment arrangement, I'd be out of business.
Yeah.
And so where does that leave us as a country? What's the solution?
In a dark place. It's going to be difficult.
Well, the ray of light is young people.
Yeah.
I love to see, one, that there isn't this apathy that young people have been accused of. It's not in everybody. There are some who have an interest in the political process. There are some who recognize the power of one and that they are making their voices heard, and I love that.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. I mean, I like to see them, you know, sometimes they televise them in Parliament, you know, because what it does is that once you start developing from that early, you tend to ensure that you become very relevant soon, you know, instead of someone who just sits around and play PlayStation every day.
I want to see more women get involved.
Definitely.
I'm very strong on that one.
Definitely.
Even now when we look at the parliament, the numbers are still paltry, and I want to see more women stepping up to play to representational politics. Lots of talk about why that doesn't happen. They're too busy raising families, etc., but it's important.
It is very, very important, I think.
Well, folks, on that note, that's where we're going to have to wrap things. I have to say a big thank you to the crew who worked on the show today. Thank you to you, the viewers, for always tuning in. Big up on yourself.
Yeah, man. Big up yourself. I'm Dennis Strong.
And I'm Patria K. Until next time.
On Point was brought to you by Dargin Global.